presentation. We're going to try to get through this pretty expeditiously because the important part is getting your questions later and be able to answer them for everybody on the line. And this will be both recorded and presented through the NSPIRE's website, as well as all of the answers and the questions available there for reference later. I have a couple people in the room with me and some folks on the line we need to introduce. We have Manish Arya, the man who knows almost everything about the solicitation and often my go-to person. Tom Williams, the element scientist for human factors behavioral performance. His deputy, Sherry Thaxton. To my left is Letty Vega, our chief scientist for, and I'm going to get this title wrong.
International collaborations.
Thank you, Letty. Mike Kanga, who is our PISMO, our Program Science and Management Office Manager. John Charles, the former chief scientist of the Human Research Program, who has announced his retirement, and thus my appearance here today with you all. And Dr. Peter Norsk on the line, our element scientist from Human Health Countermeasures, as well as his deputy in the room, Dr. Yael Barr. So we go to the next slide. So this pre-proposal conference is intended to clarify the solicitation and improve the quality and responsiveness of proposals in a timely and efficient manner. This conference is going to offer the opportunity for NASA, us, to provide potential proposers with information or emphasize existing information that may benefit you. The pre-proposal conference also offers proposers the opportunity to propose questions and receive answers and request clarification. This is public and open to all. The question and answers and discussion between NASA and the attendees will be accessible to all attendees through the NASA personnel may engage in private sidebar discussions to determine the best answer to a question before we announce it. The presentation and Q&A will be posted on the NSPIRE's website at the link you see below. Some questions may be deferred to allow sufficient time to provide an accurate answer. These questions will be posted with answers on NSPIRE's as well, and we'll let you know if we don't have the right people in the room to answer your question at the time. We go to the next slide. So a little overview of NASA's Human Research Program. We are focusing on applied research. Our goals are to perform research necessary to understand and reduce human spaceflight, human health and performance risks to support exploration. We enable development of human spaceflight medical and human performance standards, which flow down to requirements, which influence vehicle design, habitat design, and procedures that the crew may execute. We develop and validate technologies that serve to characterize, monitor, and reduce medical risks associated with human spaceflight. Let me go to the next slide, please. Exploring space in partnership. This is our agency paradigm for how we do our work in the various phases of it. Currently, we are in phase 0, where we are using both the International Space Station and ground analogs to do our work, to both characterize and reduce risk the way we understand it for exploration. Phase 1 in the 2020s is in the cislunar space. Phase 2 is completing deep space transport, construction of the vehicle, and a shakedown mission for eventual phases 3 and 4, which are an exploration trip to Mars. And go to the next slide, please. To understand how we solicit our work, it's important that you understand the components of the Human Research Program. We have 5 elements, the first one being exploration medical capability. This element focuses on the medical infrastructure and architecture of the vehicle, also identifying the specific medical conditions that would need to be mitigated, prevented, or managed post-mission. We have human factors and behavioral performance, really focusing on the interfaces between humans, vehicles, habitats, and also individual and interpersonal behavior. Human health countermeasures, which studies deep into the physiology and spaceflight-induced changes in that physiology, as well as the potential countermeasures. ISS medical projects. They have the infrastructure for flight and analog experiments. You often work with them on flight studies for both feasibility and then implementation. And then we have our space radiation element, understanding the effect of radiation exposure on the biological effects in humans, that runs the spectrum from solar particle events through deep space radiation known as galactic cosmic rays. The Human Research Program also funds the Translational Research Institute for Space Health through a cooperative agreement. They have a separate solicitation process, and you'll see topics from them. Their charter is to work in a space that's much more high risk than the Human Research Program does and innovative. If you have something really outside the box that just hasn't made its way through HRP, you might want to consider looking at the Translational Research Institute for a potential opportunity. Go to the next slide, please. As mentioned in the Phase 0, we have various venues both in space, low Earth orbit, and on Earth to conduct our work. Of course, we have the International Space Station, use of astronauts as test subjects, as well as various other models such as cell culture or animal rodent experiments. The NASA Space Radiation Lab in Brookhaven has the ability to do exposures of various types and duration just to understand the effect of space radiation. NVHAB is a new facility at the German Aerospace in Cologne, Germany, where you're capable of doing bed rest, confinement studies, short-arm radius centrifuge exposures, has elaborate testing facilities and imaging facilities within the NVHAB itself. And here at Johnson Space Center, we have the Human Exploration Research Analog, which is an isolated, confined, and controlled, where we run various campaigns and missions. Let me go to the next slide, please. To understand how our applied program works, we use a risk mitigation strategy where we articulate the relevant risks. Within those risks, we discuss and identify gaps both in knowledge and mitigation capability. But where the focus of this solicitation and both solicitations before and after it are to identify the research products required to fill the gaps. And that's often the ancillary data you find within the solicitation itself. And we're trying to generate products that feed back into the system to either advance the knowledge to a point of where we can understand how to mitigate or an actual solution to provide the mitigation. We go to the next slide, please. Within our work, we have a variety of different constraints and goals. Constraints on schedule, crew access, and the need for risk mitigation are different from those at NIH or NSF, and that you see articulated in their solicitations. Both the International Space Station and our analogs have limited resources. So when we solicit for work in those venues, and when you come into the process, our ISSMP, the International Space Station Medical Project, one of our elements, does a feasibility assessment to understand how realistic it is we can actually implement the science you're proposing. If the science is deemed acceptable, both from a peer review and a relevancy score, we'll work with you to negotiate how exactly we get you into those venues, and also, in addition to your work, how it interplays with other studies that have been selected. Our position is that an investigation should significantly contribute to the risk reduction focus of the Human Research Program. At this point, it's not mandatory that you should greatly advance the discipline itself in general or be highly innovative, but the focus is really on that the results be critical in addressing the gaps of HRP, like we discussed in the prior slide. We go to the next slide, please. Because of the various constraints and the small n number that we're able to achieve, we really focus on some statistical considerations. We put an emphasis on the robust statistical design of experiments to make it more efficient use of the limited resources. We understand that these will be small n studies and they'll not always achieve the ideal sample size, so therefore we focus on the statistical power, control of extraneous variables, margin of error, so that it's critical that the data analysis plan be sound and take into account these limitations. New for this year, in our Step 2 proposals, you must include dedicated section to describe the statistical approach or justification for not having one. We need to understand the proposed sampling procedure, experimental design, data analysis methodology, and we do have a dedicated statistician to review this during the peer review process. Let me go to the next slide, please. So here's an overview of our solicitation process, which is outlined in detail in the document itself on the NSPIRE's website. It's a two-step solicitation process. We're requesting that Step 1 proposals be submitted to NASA to include a synopsis of the intended research. These are due on the 4th of January by 5 p.m. Eastern Time. The Step 1 proposals will be reviewed for relevancy by NASA. Only proposers of Step 1 deemed to be relevant will be invited for a Step 2 proposal. Step 1 proposers will be notified of the decision by NASA by the 2nd of February. Invited Step 2 proposals are due by the 4th of April, again at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Step 2 proposals will be reviewed for merit and programmatic relevance. The merit peer review will be conducted by a panel of scientific and technical subject matter experts, and NASA will evaluate the programmatic balance, feasibility, and cost of the proposals. Final award decisions for this appendix will be announced in August of 2018. You go to the next slide, please. So here are the 7 solicitation topics. We'd like the analysis of the temporal nature of human adaptation to long-duration low Earth orbit missions, which will be a virtual NASA Specialized Center of Research, or a VN score. Our second topic, biological, physiological, and behavioral functions of mice during partial, which would be somewhere between 0 and 1G, exposures provided by centrifugation on the International Space Station. Third topic, novel spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome hypotheses and countermeasures. Previously, this was known as VIP, the Visual Impairment Intracranial Pressure Issue, has now been renamed Spaceflight-Associated Neuroocular Syndrome. Fourth topic, medical countermeasures targeting multiple tissues at risk from exposure to space radiation. Fifth topic, individual and team problem-solving skills training for exploration missions. Sixth topic, sensory stimulation for cognitive and behavioral health. And the seventh topic is human capability assessments for autonomous missions, HCAM, which is also a virtual NASA Specialized Center of Research VN score. Go to the next slide, please. That concludes the formal charts for today. So we're going to open up the chat so that folks may ask questions. And we're going to manage the scrolling and ability to read the questions while we provide answers, which has been tricky in the past. So we have a question, is there an interest in microbiome? In past solicitations, we have focused on microbiome. This one, if microbiome were to be of interest in one of the topics in terms of how you would propose your work, I think that's something that we would entertain. Second question is, what is expected in the application for January 4th? That is the Step 1 aspect of the proposal that's due on the 4th, and it is a synopsis. It's a 5-page summary, but I believe in those 5 pages there's some logistical information. It's not all summary, correct? So again, the details of that is found discreetly in the appendix itself. What does NASA mean by only well-established and validated techniques, protocols, and instruments will be employed in the flight project? Proposed studies that require ground validation prior to flight will not be considered and will be rejected during the Step 1 review process. So currently, if you're going to suggest or propose a flight study, your technique that will be flown should have already gone through some ground validation in terms of you're not testing the test, you know the test is capable of delivering analyzable results. Validation is a matter of the evidence level you could present. I don't know that we've set a threshold for validation for ground technology in this case. So if it's a unique and novel testing mechanism, if it's only under development now, it wouldn't be considered for flight. It would have to go through a ground study before it's flown. If it's been through a ground study, I think part of the peer review and merit review would understanding the maturation of what the ground study showed and your readiness to flight.
And that's only for topic 1. The others were
Yeah, topic 1 is the one looking for flight studies. So the others are ground-based and analog-based, where new measurement techniques would be entertained. Is there an interest in plant-based life support systems? Currently in this solicitation, I think that's a little beyond the scope, but if it were something that were intertwined with the topics that we've put out there, one of our partner programs known as Space Biology focuses on plant-based systems, where you could find a little bit more information about what's been done in that area.
I would also add that proposals, and so we belong to...
Jen, this is David Tomko. May I make a comment about that to the person who asked?
Sure.
There is currently an NRA open for space biology. It's Appendix G to the Space Biology Omnibus, which requests plant studies.
Thank you, David. Letty, did you have one?
Yes. Also, if you look at in the INSPIRE's website, STMD, which is another directorate separate from HEO, which is where a human research program lies, they focus on engineering, development of engineering systems and plant-based life support systems. If you would like to submit a proposal through that program, that would probably be applicable as well.
I think we have to scroll up a little bit. Okay, thank you. Okay, that's a standard method. Okay, so the question is, how can we obtain data specifications? What is measured? So there is an appendix that's descriptive of all the measures that are done under standard measures that you could request data sharing with. It says, is the description of the statistical aspect important for step 1? I think that's dependent on what you're proposing, and the direction is to go design an appropriate statistical method for the science you're proposing, which is probably unique. So we don't really go into detail about what's required, just that a statistical plan is required. Is there an estimate of when Appendix E awards will be announced in order to rework unselected proposals for this appendix? Yeah, it's currently in work. That is probably not the answer you want to hear, considering step 1s are due January 4th. But we don't have an absolute date for that. For topic 1, which tissues could we request, especially blood, plasma, serum, PBMCs, microbiome swabs only? So if you're referring to topic 1 being the temporal 1-year flight study, and then if you're referring to what standard measures, any of the standard measures are open for requesting to be worked with. So there wouldn't be a limit. For the mouse experiments, can we propose to analyze the tissues obtained from the mice, or do we need to breed the mice and ship them to NASA and handle the mice only once they return? So I think Letty and David might have some comment on the centrifugation. I believe the mice are going to be controlled.
Yes, the mice are going to be controlled.
Meaning that they come from the NASA source.
Yes, they come from a NASA. They should come from one NASA source, and they're just one species of mouse for that particular study.
Letty, David Tomko here. Could you speak up a little bit? I can barely hear you.
That mic not working.
Yeah. So can you hear me now?
Yes, but much better.
Okay. So David, they were asking a question about do they the questioner asked if they needed to breed the mice for the use of the experiments, and I said no, that we would provide the mice for those particular experiments, but there is specific species of mouse that we would use.
I think that's an important issue that we need to have Ben and NRIS put on the FAQ page.
Okay, will do. Cool.
So the next question is, I am from Nepal, can I apply proposals regarding the topic you stated? So topic 1 has potential for collaborating with international partners. NASA couldn't fund you directly unless you were associated with a U.S. institution. If you can affiliate, again, with one of our international partners, that is a way to seek a funding opportunity. What if a project is of interest for multiple topics? They're very diverse topics. If you're talking about a particular methodology that may cross topics, I think you want to think about how you want to communicate that and which topics it might be more relevant to than others. Is it true that no cost estimates of any sort are required for the Phase 1 submissions? Yeah, that's true. We're not looking for budget in Phase 1. Should this technique have not been introduced prior to astronaut health protocols, but used and studied in many other settings apart from pre-ISS? I don't think I particularly understand the question in terms of which technique should not have been introduced prior.
I think that's addressing the topic.
What hardware?
Only established techniques can be used. She's saying that she's used it on other settings, but not in space.
Yes. So Dr. Charles was saying the clarification that it could be validated clearly in a non-spaceflight setting in a non-astronaut population. The point is, whatever it's used to measure, it has been shown it can actually do that. This is not for development of hardware, it's for established hardware.
And Dr. Fogarty, can I
Sure.
go back for one, just to clarify? All of the proposals minus the rodent centrifuge proposals are open to international participants if they have a letter of recommendation. The rodent centrifuge proposal itself is just limited to U.S. investigators only.
Is there diagnostic ultrasound imaging available in flight or in the analog system for data collection purposes? Yes, we do have ultrasound on orbit, and depending on what the science requirements are, an ultrasound would be used in the analog as well. I think we answered that question already. Yeah. Should multiple PIs putting in individual proposals suggest potential virtual team, i.e. using different tissues, organs in the same topic, since you have a VN score? So yeah, everyone's encouraging.
Just justifying it to be. So,
If you have a mic you could use. So Dr. Williams.
yeah, so basically on the virtual N-scores or the N-scores, what we're looking for is the best combination of the individual proposals. And if what's deemed to be the best self-organized, then certainly that is a consideration. So the intent on our side was to look at all the different proposals and then organize them in the manner that we think best addresses the proposal of the solicitation. So if that's self-organized, just justify how you've done that, why you think that is the best way to do it.
Dr. Fogarty?
Yeah.
Also, I think also relating to the VN score for the topic 1, there's nothing wrong with having proposals self-organized, but they need to understand that they will all be judged on their individual merits. So write a strong proposal, and you may indicate other proposals that may come in that would be appropriate, synergize, to be synergetic. But and NASA's under no obligation to select anybody else's proposal if they select your proposal.
Thank you. Shall a proposal for topic 1 cover all or a specific number of human physiological systems? I don't think we prescribe the number, so it's at least one relevant system. If it's relevant to more, that would be fine also. Can we find out the research instrumentation that are available on board to augment or be used? I believe there is an appendix that describes the in-flight. It comes from our ISS Medical Projects group that tells you the hardware that's already available for use on station.
Posted alongside this.
So it's a separate
Separate document.
document on ANSPIRE's website. Okay. For ground study for a new technique, does it need to be tested in a surrogate microgravity test? If it has been well tested in humans for other diseases, would it be eligible for this competition? Yes, I think that's what we're talking about. You don't necessarily need a microgravity test. It would be something like a zero-G flight, but it should definitely have been shown in humans to be relevant for measuring your variable of interest. Behavior modification, would it fall under any form of gravity, repetition, or last synopsis?
So Tom Williams here. So if by behavior modification we're meaning behavior modification as a therapeutic technique or as a countermeasure approach, then that could be conceptualized under the sensory stimulation as one of the countermeasures that, with the appropriate justification, if that's what's meant by the gravity repetition. I'm not certain exactly what that's referring to though. But yes, as a countermeasure, but again, would have to be appropriately justified and demonstrated how it was contributed.
This one is cardiovascular and hemodynamic responses on dry land versus space. We have probably a compendium of knowledge documenting those two things specifically. But in our topic 1, we talk about time course of change. For both of those things would be relevant. Do you expect that there will be another similar competition in 2018? So as a solicitation topic, our path to risk reduction, which is on the HRP website in a lot of detail, you're going to be able to see that due to the time constraint we have to deliver risk reduction, we don't repeat solicitation topics. Topic 1, clarification. Standard measures are example peripheral leukocyte distribution. So just to make sure I understand correctly, we will be able to get the peripheral leukocyte themselves, the cells, and not just the data for distribution. Thank you. At this point, you would be receiving the data. If you need the blood itself to do your own cell differential, you should request the blood volume you would require. I see that the Appendix G Rose Bio solicitation is past its NOI date. Could I still apply? Does anyone work with Rose Bio?
Yes, this is David Tomko. The answer to that is that you may still write a proposal. We're not using a step 1, step 2 process, so NOIs are not required, not mandatory, not binding.
Thank you, David. Are zebrafish a possibility? If so, there is a NASA source for them. So zebrafish traditionally have been used in something more like the space biology program. We are interested in translational work. This current solicitation would be challenging to use something like a zebrafish for. I don't know, David, if you want to comment on if you have something.
It seems like that might be a topic more appropriate for a space biology proposal. I don't think we have a deal for zebrafish habitats, so I'm not sure. Can we take that offline and verify that? And Ben or somebody remind me that we have to do that?
Sure, we will take that action. Is there an interest in senescence longevity during prolonged spaceflight and countermeasure studies in mice at the ISS? Would this apply to solicitation topic 2? I don't know, Letty or David, so the idea of senescence and longevity is relevant. Do you want to comment on topic 2?
Yeah, this is Peter. Can you hear me?
Yes, Peter.
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I don't think we have an interest in long racing.
Okay, this time.
So if I could comment on that for space biology does have an interest in development and aging, but certainly not in this HRP solicitation, but you might find some way to work it into a proposal in response to Appendix G for space biology.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that is exactly what I was.
So if somebody has an open mic or an open phone, could you please mute your phone?
Okay, we'll work on that.
Good luck.
So you have 2 questions for topic 7, which is the Human Capabilities Assessment for Autonomous Mission, the VN score. Oh, I did. Okay, sorry, I'm going to back up for a second. If the team includes international collaborators, should they also be registered in NSPIRES and provide biosketches even though they will not receive funds directly? So this is how, in order to provide the construct for us understanding your collaboration and who they are, I believe they also have to have the letters of support from their home agencies, because that's where their funding within your budget profile would come from. Do you want to comment?
I would say that the letters of support should be, at minimum, should be submitted by the step 2s if you are accepted, and the step 1s, it would be nice to know that you have agency support already.
So I think Tom has been reading question, the next question, prepared for the answer.
So the question regarding topic 7 about what's NASA's expectations in terms of balance between research, experimentations to get data that can support standards updates versus development of virtual assistants.
Can't hear you.
Okay, sorry, thank you. So the expectation is that the experimentation be used to help develop and justify the use of the virtual assistant. So part of it is to have a good conceptualization as to how you're going to help contribute to our better understanding of what the standard should be, but also the experimentation and the conceptualization of how you'll leverage that on the development of the implementation of the virtual assistants. And the second question relates to that in terms of existing tools. What we intend to do is to link you with labs based on the nature of your proposal, and that's where what the lab is working on and the leveraging of that technical capability with your conceptualization of how to address the needs that are identified is how those two will come together, and then the experimentation will be within the analogs that are specified within the solicitation.
It's a complex question and a complex answer. Given the low end, investigators may seek to collect data from external sources. To what degree will the representativeness of external samples be taken into consideration when reviewing the proposals? Yeah, so if you're looking for an analog population to the astronauts, we do evaluate how relevant that analog population is with respect to the types of data they would generate. We can talk about, the use of undergraduate students being young and maybe inexperienced versus, say, an astronaut corps, but it depends on really what you're trying to tease out. For ground-based research topic 4 involving space radiation exposures involving NASA Brookhaven, which is at the NSRL, will NASA provide animals, or do we need to mobilize animals from our institution? I don't think I have a space radiation person in here. I think in the past,
I'm online, Jen. You have to breed and bring your own mice.
thank you. Sorry, I did not introduce you. I didn't realize we had. Apologize. Lisa Simonson, the element scientist from Space Radiation. Thank you. Can a team propose to acquire new data in the analog? Should the facility be contacted first? No, I don't believe necessarily the facility should be contacted first. And the constraints for things like new types of data being acquired is lower for ground analogs than it is for spaceflight. So you could be testing a new technique for measurement in an analog. I want to do lab research in the aerodynamics and spaceship microbiology. What are the requirements for this research? I think if you were to review the solicitation and the information available on the HRP website, you would see how we phrase our risk with respect to microbiology and the type of research we're looking for.
And Jen, may I add, this is David Tomko again, that the questioner should take a look at the space biology tasks that are funded and what we're doing in microbiome of the ISS, and actually we're doing some of that in collaboration with HRP.
Microbiome.
But again, I would reference Appendix G for space biology as a place to apply this time around.
Okay. Follow up on topic 7. Can you outline the difference between virtual assistance and adaptive response displays?
Part of the solicitation is to help make those distinctions working.
Dr. Williams, I'm sorry, but it's hard to understand. You're cutting out quite a bit.
Sorry, we must have a bad mic.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, you sound good.
Okay, so part of this solicitation is to help define and characterize part of those distinctions, but the way it's been conceptualized as we put this together is the difference between a virtual assistant and an adaptive responsive display would be the virtual assistant already knows what, in essence, needs to be done. An adaptive and responsive display would be one that's monitoring the performance and then would be adaptive in the sense that it may need to offer that assistance, but the crew member could potentially turn that offer of assistance down depending on the state that they were in. So the anticipation would be if you're fatigued, if you're sleep deprived, there's an intelligent system that knows the nature of how much sleep you got the night before. An adaptive responsive display maybe would be brighter or louder so that you would compensate for that degraded performance on the crew member's part. A virtual assistant would then provide the assistance that that adaptive responsive display noted was available. So part of this is to characterize that relationship and to validate in what way it does work together.
And unfortunately, the next question also falls on your back. Dr. Thaxton.
Okay, so I think this goes kind of along the lines of the question that Tom addressed earlier. So we list off a lot of different types of systems that we expect.
Daxton, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we can't really hear you.
Okay, so it's not. Is this a mic? Can you hear me?
Why don't you take this one?
All right, let me scoot over. Okay, is this better? No, I can hear myself in the room. Okay. Okay, so I think this seems to be kind of all in the same flavor of the question that Tom answered a few minutes ago about we've provided a list of systems and tools that we anticipate being needed for these long-duration exploration missions, and most of these are things that there are groups at NASA that they're currently working on developing these, and so our focus isn't necessarily on the development of these tools, it's helping look at the human performance implications of these tools and driving the standards based on that. And so I feel like, and Tom can correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like the intent of this call is not so much to have a deliverable of those tools, it's that you might need to leverage a tool that's already in the works in order to get baseline information on the performance implications. And so, again, the focus is probably more on the research than on the tool development side. So it's the intent that these are existing tools. So I think the intent is that there's at least some kind of a prototype available already at NASA that we would work to put you in touch with the folks that have them and set up the proper agreements to be able to use them for your research. And now that's not to say that if you have a prototype tool already that you couldn't use that, but we don't want to fund the development of a prototype from the ground up if we already have something that could already be leveraged. Let's see if I've hit everything in it yet. Can we be more specific about what is facilitated and provided by NASA as current state of the art? I'm not sure if we can be more specific at this time. We would hope that you provide us with what your assumptions and needs are, and we would try to do our best to match up across the groups and across the NASA facilities that we have. So yeah, I mean, that's correct. The assumptions do have to be made by the proposers. So
it'll be a combination of what they propose versus what is in place to tell them where they would provide the assist versus be developing de novo. I think I would stick with the other mic.
Yes. So in part, what is intended here is that when you look at the listing of the potential interfaces on the different labs, part of this is to conceptualize what do you envision are the type of systems and monitoring tools that would be needed in order to have an adaptive responsive system. And then those labs have various levels of development of those types of tools that are currently in development. So this is a maturing process. We wish we could say that every one of those labs has a tool ready for you to test. Part of this is the conceptualization of what is needed, and then your coming together with the lab may facilitate that lab refining something or moving in a different or a new direction to get the type of capability that is conceptualized. So part of this is to stimulate that end state that we need to get to. If we don't have a mission control, what type of intelligent system would need to be there that would monitor and provide just-in-time capability for a crew?
Thank you. So we'll do our best to provide a relevant link to Mr. Sharma. The next one for topic 1, does NASA expect to include commercial crew launches? We're going to talk about the uncertainty of that playing a role in the 1 year.
Right now, the expectation is that these missions will take place on commercial crew launches. It is not currently envisioned that they will use the Soyuz vehicle. It is envisioned they will use commercial crew vehicles, but no agreement has been reached by any of the partners, with any of the partners, for the implementation of these missions. So that assumption may change in actual practice.
It's called the standard measures. So
This is a separate document.
separate.
So this is the question about the physiological data to be available for topic 1. It's actually available for all the topics. For flight, there's also some standard measures that are done in analogs. So it's called standard measures or supplement.
That's what that is right there.
But it's in terms of how they see it on the website. Okay. There is an optical coherence tomography device on the ISS. In the hardware supplement, they would have listed the current device that's on orbit, and then they would work with you during an implementation phase about what device is currently present. Those do change from time to time. They are upgraded. Would microbiome studies apply to solicitation topic 2, I believe, which is the rodent centrifuge?
Yes, it would.
So yes, it would.
Yeah, I would suggest. Hello, this is Peter. Yeah, I agree. It would.
I would suggest to the questioner that you go look at the NASA task book to see what both HRP and Space Biology have funded with regard to the mammalian microbiome.
Will PIs be allowed to fly with their experiments? That would be a no. We have astronauts who are both our test subjects and operators on orbit, and it's a lengthy selection and certification process. Is there any interest in standard drug release study in space environment? If so, what would that topic be? It is mostly based on PK/PD and ground-based microgravity conditions. At this point, we don't have a specific PK/PD topic in this solicitation. so it's not the focus at this time. During one-year missions, will ARED be the only bone health countermeasure employed, or will pharmaceutical countermeasures also be employed? Is there continued interest in monitoring changes in bone mineral balance during ISS missions to determine the effectiveness of bone health countermeasures as part of Topic 1? Currently, the only resistive exercise device on orbit is ARED. Pharmaceutical countermeasures are not currently used nominally. You could identify exclusion criteria in your proposal if you thought that was necessary. Is there any interest in training in water comparable physiological responses?
I think that's immersion stuff.
To go to space. I think it's up to you to propose the analog you would need your work done in and the rationale for why that analog would be appropriate. You want to talk about immersion? Okay.
Jim?
Yes, Peter.
I would say no to the water comparison because you cannot do water immersion for such a long time, and it would be very acute, and we are not interested in the acute responses to spaceflight.
It definitely has been deprioritized, true.
Pardon me?
The gaps. Is there someone online? Okay.
I'm still online, yeah.
The gaps identified in Topic 5 cover a wide range of research areas. Are there any that are the highest priority to NASA?
Okay, and the gaps, or Team Gap 1, 2, and 5 are the high priority gaps, and they're very related. One's identifying the key threats. Team Gap 2 is the validated measures, and 5 is the ground-based training methods. And then the second two training are related. So if you address the primary relevant gaps, those 3 train gaps, and the team, and then the 2 train, you've hit the priorities. The secondaries are related, but if you're asking for priorities, those would be the top priorities.
So follow up on ground-based research at Brookhaven at the NSRL. Lisa, did you want to comment on animals other than mice?
Yes, you can propose animals other than mice and make sure that you justify the model system and its relevance to the endpoint of interest that you're testing. If you have a specific model you want to discuss, then send me an email.
There's an audio issue, and then any interest in nutrition area or cardiometabolic disorders. I think as it pertains to one of the topics we put out, where nutrition might be relevant, that would be part of what you're suggesting. I think there's probably at least 3 topics.
Topic 1 has nutrition listed as a
Okay.
area.
Yeah, we do try to list subtopics within the call so you can understand areas that you could focus on. What is the best contact to ask specific questions about the preparation of proposal? I think we would need a more specific
The element scientist is listed under each.
topic. Yeah, there are individuals who are called out under each specific topic area if you had a very specific question. So topic 7 does not require delivering of prototypes. It's for the...
Certainly not intended to suggest that. Prototypes are always welcome, but there are labs that you'll be working with that may have something that already is in the prototype type stage. So part of this is the conceptualization of what's needed, and then if you have an idea for a prototype and you already understand what's in a lab that may be usable in that way to conceptualize and demonstrate, then that certainly would be within the scope of this solicitation.
Is there any interest in metabolomic biomarker changes due to spaceflight? Yes, we're interested in understanding biomarkers that could help us understand the changes that are measured and predictive. I think there's more than one topic where that could be relevant. I think we understood you're asking if the PIs will be allowed to fly with their experiments, and still no. No more payload specialists, unless you know anything else.
Nope, that's correct.
Are there any devices to measure oxygen consumption and its derivatives on board ISS? There is some capability to monitor gas exchange. I think that would also be encompassed in the document that allows you to understand what hardware is on orbit for VO2 max. And can you comment on a realistic anticipated size, amount of mice or groups in the potential centrifuge experiment? Yes, I think we have those specifics.
Yes, we have those specifics in the solicitation information, but I can tell you that the centrifuge can hold 12 rodents at one time, and that we are actually splitting the centrifuge use with JAXA, so I would anticipate that half of it will go to U.S. investigators and half will go to JAXA investigators.
And all of those characteristics, David Tomko again here, are listed at the bottom of page Appendix C-11 on top of Appendix C-12. So they're all there, including the type of mice and the sex and the age and everything.
Yeah, and it is mice only. At this point, we don't have the capability to centrifuge rats. What are areas of interest in the clinical nutrition area? I think that's up to you to...
They can look at the HRR.
Yeah, we have, again, through the Human Research Program website, there is the Human Research Roadmap to understand the vast amount of space that clinical nutrition could call upon. Who is the contact in NASA for the projects related to SANS? I believe that at this point that would be Dr. Peter Norsk under that topic under human health countermeasures. Yeah, we do have their names and their emails in the solicitation. Are there any brain imaging devices available in ISS that can be used to take brain MRI of astronauts and send back to Earth? No, currently the only imaging modality we have in orbit is ultrasound. We do pre-post MRIs. Yeah, I'm sorry, that is pre-flight and post-flight for magnetic resonance imaging. For topic 4, should the proposed countermeasure address protecting mitigation for both cancer risk and CNS risk, or may it just address one of the two risks? Lisa, did you want to comment? I think this was tissues at risk, but...
Yes, so in the solicitation, the idea of the topic was to look at cross risk. So you would look at a cancer and cardiovascular, or cardiovascular and CNS, any combination of risk areas with common pathways. Or we did leave it open for the possibility of multiple tumors at risk. So at least multiple cancerous tumors.
Finally caught up on the backlog, and we're waiting for a few folks who are typing. Again, we're focused on, this question is about the proposal for lab research on aerodynamics and spaceship and how long will it take. So we are focused on human health and performance. At this point, we don't sponsor research in aerodynamics nor in vehicle design. I think you had asked for a link to that before, and we'll provide that. For solicitation topic 2, what are the main areas of interest in biology and physiology functions? Peter or David, Letty, you want to comment?
Yeah. We have indicated in topic 2 a list of prioritized areas, but anything in our PR is of interest, but we have indicated what areas are of focus right now in the solicitation.
And space biology is interested in whatever is going to be of interest to HRP, but in the definition of the underlying molecular biology and so forth, we're looking, as is indicated in the solicitation, for teaming horizontally or vertically translational teams to look at all aspects of biology, from molecular to organismal.
Thank you. Our brain MRI pre- and post-flight routine for all crew members who holds that information. They are part of what are called medical requirements. That's held by the Lifetime Surveillance of Astronaut Health, known as LSAH. They do have their own portal for data requests and can be incorporated, that data can be incorporated into a research proposal. Looking for the supplement.
We'll put a link in the FAQ. So
We'll redirect you, as Anish said, from the frequently asked questions, we'll redirect you to exactly where on the NSPIRE site you can find both the standard measure supplement and as well as the instrumentation from ISSMP. So for the protocol to request, so you would identify in your proposal that you required the pre- and post-flight MRI imaging. It's part of the process to do data sharing agreements. Since you require it as part of your protocol, but someone else is actually doing the implementation, that's how the logistics work there. The medical requirements belong to our medical operations branch. They are publicly available. We can also provide a link to where you can access those documents. We will answer your question in writing about whether PIs can fly with their experiments or not.
Jennifer, shake your head left and right.
Yeah, the answer is no. No. We don't fly payload specialists anymore. When and where is the application to be released? Well, the NRA is open. As we said, the step ones are due by the 4th of January. Thank you. The VITS room answered you. Are there any constraints on the total time of proposed experiment? From the development of your proposal, no, there are no time constraints. That actually starts to occur later when we talk about implementation.
right, in the ISSMP document, they give guidelines.
Is there a link? You're referring to the NRA.
That's fine.
NSPIRES has it. I think if you saw the title to today's briefing, you would have the HERO number for Appendix C. Could you please share the link to see the meta requirements? Yes, we'll put that in the frequently asked questions where all these you'll see the responses. Now we're not going to type here the URL. We will provide that in the frequently asked questions. Sure, you're welcome. We don't have anybody typing. Oh, we got one more. You're welcome. Yeah, and so we're at our 4 o'clock mark. We'll answer this one. I see more typing. We're going to bring it to a close. VO2 max during exercise in water, immersible erg cycles, lower comparative. Yeah, we have published studies about the difference between the VO2 max between flight and ground. Those are published papers. And they would be available actually in our evidence reports, which are on the HRP website in that under aerobic capacity. Thank you. Sure. All right. Well, it is 4 o'clock. I want to thank everyone for participating. I hope for those of you, we're always interested in males and females. The goal is to be 50-50. We fly less female astronauts, so that is difficult to achieve. But
Excuse me, Dr. Fogarty, the male-female question is addressed in the solicitation. We're going to try to match the demographics of prior ISS expeditions in terms of male, female, younger, older, and previously flown versus rookies.
Thank you. Real quickly, in topic 2, where you have the centrifugation, partial G of the animals, I do believe that evaluation of bone is of interest.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and attention. As we stated, all this will be available on the NSPIRE's website in writing, and we'll provide the links that we said we would and that you requested. Thank you. For the Human Research Program, and you'll be hearing me throughout this presentation.